Hey everybody, welcome back to H&S Collectibles. This is Cody, and so this video is all about soundtracks, records, but mainly soundtracks. This is the soundtrack tag, and I'm doing this for Beth over at B-Side Records. There'll be a link to her channel in the description below. And so I always enjoyed soundtracks. Long back as I can remember, I kind of grew up on them. My dad got me started into them, and my sister would buy them, in fact, but she often bought soundtracks that were more of a collection of songs. Things like the Footloose soundtrack come to mind. I in turn went for scores. That's what my dad kind of got me into, and I would always notice the music in a movie, and then want to go out and get it. Even from a young age, I can remember always gravitating towards the music and just keying in on that. I've never been musical. Never claimed to be an expert in music, but I know what I like. So anyway, so she had some questions for us, that were fun to think about, fun to try to answer, and I'm going to go through them now, and I got everything kind of piled up here. So her first question is, what is the first soundtrack you ever bought? And I had to think way back, and that was a toughie. I can remember I didn't really start buying them a lot till I was about 13 or 14, but there were a few before that, and a lot that I grew up with. But the first one that I would say was my purchase, and you can see the album's in a heck of a shape, Ghostbusters. So I would have been about 7, when this came out, but it's in pretty ratty condition right now. But still in my collection, and you can see I used to label what was mine. So there's my name written on the Ghost, so everybody knew this was my record. So that's number 1. Number 2, the newest soundtrack to your collection, and I'm going to kind of give 2 answers here. So one is the Death Waltz release of Halloween. I did not have Halloween Part 1 on record previously, and I got it to complete that set for the big sleeve that I bought that is back here on the record player table. So that's the latest one I got, but in all honesty, the latest one that I got that I did not already have on some other format, like, I've got Halloween 3 or 4 times on CD. Halloween 5. So until recently, I never owned a copy of Halloween 5 in any format. So that's my answer for number 2. Number 3, the one that you listen to the most. So I would say that the one that I listen to the most has got to be Day of the Dead. So here's 2 different releases of it. Actually, I don't even know if I would call this one a release. This is basically a bootleg copy that I got off of eBay years and years ago. You can see they tried their best to print a decent label, and it's even labeled Zombie Music and Bub CD, but it was the only way I could get a hold of the original score at the time. And then later, I believe it was La La Land Records put out this 2-disc limited edition, 3,000 units of the complete score, and I absolutely love Day of the Dead. I play it often, all the time. It's on my phone, it's on my MP3 player in my car. It is one that I can just listen to basically from beginning to end and not think, wow, I'm going to skip this track. It just plays, and I let it play. So that's that. My favorite composer, if you know me at all, it's John Carpenter. I have, I think, practically every John Carpenter score. There's probably 1 or 2 that I'm missing if I really went down the list, but I have the majority of them. Love his music. I've always been kind of hooked on it since I was a kid. So Halloween was one of the early themes that I always liked, and my love for him grew from there. And then the big close second would have to be Ennio Morricone. Of course, starting with the old westerns and then moving up through things like The Untouchables and The Thing and into the Hateful Eight. And, there's just tons of awesome scores that he has done. My favorite instrumental score, I'm going to go back again and say Day of the Dead. Can't say enough good about that. If you don't want the same answer twice in the list, then I'd probably go with The Fog. The Fog is another one that I can pretty much play from start to finish and not think that there's a track that I don't care for. Really puts me in the mood of the movie when I play The Fog. Let's see. Awesome movie with a horrible soundtrack. So I don't have it to show. So if it had a horrible soundtrack, it's not one that I paid attention to, probably, or gave a lot of thought to. But as far as ones that I own, the one that I don't play, the one that I probably listen to the least, because I think in the movie I like it, by itself I don't. So that's kind of what I'm judging by here. Does the score have a quality where I can listen to it while I'm working in my shop or I'm driving? And that's In the Mouth of Madness. As much as I love that movie, and I do, I love that movie, that score, the opening theme I like, the closing theme I like, and that's pretty much it. Everything on the in-between, if it's playing in the car, I will just skip right over it. In fact, I think in the car I only have the opening and closing track. I don't have anything in the middle. So I'm going to say In the Mouth of Madness there. A soundtrack that is better than the movie. So I talked about this with a friend recently. I'm going to go with Rocky Horror Picture Show. So I've watched Rocky Horror several times, and I will say now, ever since several years ago when I got a good copy of the Rocky Horror Picture Show movie soundtrack, I don't watch that movie anymore. I love the music. I play it often. It plays in the car. But overall, yeah, that is a horrible movie. So yeah, that's going to be my answer there. A song by my favorite artist or band featured on a soundtrack. So this is... it wasn't featured on the soundtrack album, but it was in the movie. So I'm going to qualify it there. But it's going to be Everybody Knows by Leonard Cohen. And I don't have the soundtrack anymore. This was on the movie Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater. It's the opening music when you get to see his radio set up, and it's what he plays when he goes on the air. And I had never heard of Leonard Cohen before I saw that movie, and I just fell in love with that song. I would watch that opening sequence over and over again. In fact, I went out and bought the soundtrack, and that song was not featured in the soundtrack. A cover of the song by Concrete Blonde was featured on the soundtrack, so then I had to go out and find Leonard's album on my own. And ever since then, I've picked up every Leonard album that I could find. Love Leonard Cohen. Let's see. Share a soundtrack that you think everyone should own. And I'm going to go with Phantasm. And this is the same one that Drew showed over at Hey Isn't That Devon Graham. This is the standard black issue, which is why I said I was jealous of his red and silver version. Incidentally, Phantasm is the first CD I ever ordered online. I do remember that. So I've had this since about 1999 or 2000, right around there. First online purchase I made was the Phantasm sound. And while we're on the topic of Phantasm, I'll go ahead and just show this to show off. This is my autographed Varice Sarabande soundtrack. So this is one of the originals from 1979, and I had the cast sign it at two different conventions. Angus Scrimm at one convention, and Michael Baldwin, Bill Thornberry, Reggie Bannister, Don Coscarelli, Cat Lester, I think I said Michael Baldwin, all sign it at a different convention. So this one I keep framed up on the wall. The Mondo release there is the one that I play. So, and then her last question was, are there any kind of holy grail items for you when it comes to soundtracks? So there are several. As far as looking for them on record, I really want to find, and they're out there, I just need to pony up the money, the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack, the Day of the Dead soundtrack. I'd like to have both of them on record. Reanimator, I would like to get, but one soundtrack that I have looked for online, I have looked here and there for years, it's going to sound so goofy, the soundtrack to the Three Stooges Meet Hercules. I've always wanted that soundtrack, and as far as I can tell in my research, it's never been released. On vinyl back in the day, back in the 50s or 60s when that movie was made. Not on any collections I could ever find, but there's a couple pieces in particular of music in that movie I would just love to have. So yeah, I think that's it. So there's my entry. That's my tag video. Anybody who watches my channel who loves soundtracks, feel free to jump in on this tag. It's a fun one. Get you looking at your collection and kind of thinking back. So until next time, like and subscribe if you haven't. Go check out B-Side Records. I think you'll like her. And everybody stay safe. So thanks.